I'd like to introduce Simon Falkiner, who is a grain and graze coordinator but also a farmer and works with a number of organisations looking at NRM and agricultural enterprises. I guess what struck me about this particular presentation was very much following on from Julie and Carol, who is in the group today, was looking at feed gaps and optimising the natural resource that you have as farmers and maximising that opportunity, I guess, to generate wealth and undertake other activities on your farm that might involve soil health and so forth. So Simon's been involved in agriculture pretty much all his life, I think, reading this, and so he's got a great wealth of knowledge. So the other area to this presentation is there's a wonderful project occurring down at Burman run by the GRDC looking at grazing crops, and I guess that particular group down there, Simon's doing some work with at present, but what was happening on that site was fantastic. I think the GRDC had invested quite a considerable amount of money in that site, and it just, I guess it gives you options for your grazing, whether they're cereals, canola or lucerne. So welcome, Simon, thank you.
Thanks, Lachlan. Well, thanks for having me up, and I'll be fairly quick. Lots of this will be, if it can be interactive, this talk. I don't want to just talk at you. It'd be great if I say something you just don't believe what I've said, please challenge me. I'd love to be challenged. So let's have a two-way conversation, yeah, it'll go quicker, and I won't put you all to sleep. The death hour after lunch. Yeah, Simon Falkiner. I'm a consultant, researcher, and farmer. Are my roles and have been for the last 10 years. Previous 20 years we're farming full time. Today's presentation is looking at how to put cattle into a grain and graze situation. Who's familiar with the grain and graze? Any parts of the grain and graze program? We've got a few. Who grazes their crops? Are there any people here that graze crops? Yep, we've got a few. That's terrific. What I'm going to try and promote today is stacking enterprises on top of each other. I'm a bit greedy when it comes to making a dollar. I like to make a dollar because I like to go fishing. I like to go on holiday. I like to do all those sorts of things. And I need to make as many dollars to support that habit as I can. So if I can double stack an enterprise, get a free lunch, make an extra dollar, it makes sense to me. A lot of what we heard this morning was talking about that. And there are some real opportunities in the grain and graze program to make an extra dollar. If we look at, this is from the Grain and Graze 1 program. If we look at, and you don't have to worry too much about these numbers here, what I really want you to look at, this is in a tough year, when a drought year, when yields are low. That's the farm income. As the farm got bigger, things got tougher. If we added in some of the grain and graze things that I'm going to talk about, grazing crops, putting cereals into Lucerne, dabbling in integrated pest management, you can lift your production or your income to that level. So down here, you're not making a profit. If you include the grain and graze principles, or some of them, there's an opportunity to be above the break-even line. In a really good year, in a mid-year and a really good year, the gap's about the same. There is an improvement. It's stacking enterprises on top of each other and taking opportunities. So it's really important. If I look at this graph over here, to fill in this and match it up with this, that's dry matter and that's time. What's the graph we saw this morning? What does it look like? Yeah. So we've got this feed gap. And we've got another feed gap here in the summer. And we've heard about it. We've heard about it millions and millions and millions of times. The Grain and Graze program is about trying to fill that feed gap. And we heard earlier that if we change to spring calving to this part of the year, that makes a lot of sense. The problem is, what effect does it have on your markets? are you going to get a premium for your calves if you calve then? If we can shift or make this bigger, it gives us more opportunity, more flexibility to capture markets, and that's what is really important. The other problem I see with this, these are average, and a lot of these graphs, and I'm not sure how they were derived, the ones we saw this morning. That was last year. A lot of these graphs that we see, and we see them everywhere, talk about averages. A really, really dangerous exercise. We should be talking about most likely events and the probability of an event occurring. We may have an average way up here, but that average may come from 3 events way up here, 5 events way down here, and a couple of events here. If you strike these years there, you're not going to have this feed supply here. It's going to be way down here. You've got all those extra numbers, and you've got no feed, which is a problem. You all live in God's own country, and of course you'll have your graphs will look like that. It rains all the time. You've got feed all the time, so it's easy. Us southern, I'm from down at Geelong. Yeah, it's a miserable part of the world. The rainfall's really variable, so we really struggle. There's a program called At Risk where we can analyse rainfall events, and it gives us probabilities of events occurring. This, between the winter areas, we know 98% of years we're going to get enough moisture to fill the bucket. So we've got enough moisture to grow grass. The bucket is going to be full. From the spring through to the end of the growing season, we've only got an 8% chance of the bucket being full. So 92% of the years, we won't be achieving this peak pasture production. So it's quite frightening. A lot of our decision making is geared towards reaching that peak. 92% of the time, it's somewhere down here.
Why is land value so high then?
Real estate. Real estate does. Cropping, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, very little cropping there was a few oats, lots of livestock. Raised beds has been introduced. We can now grow crops. We can now grow crops as well as most people because we can get this excess moisture off our paddocks. And so the cropping revolution drove land prices. Country that was going for $600 an acre, in 10 years went to $3,000 an acre. Just ridiculous. And people were paying $150 an acre to lease land. Just crazy stuff. And they weren't taking into consideration that 9% or 92% of years, the bucket would be empty or not enough moisture.
So where would you find out the most likely rainfall for an area?
Well, the data's all there. All the rainfall data's there. You have to have the program to crunch the numbers, and it comes out about mode. We all talk about averages, and there's 3 forms of error: mean, mode, and what's the other one? Medium. The mode is the most likely, and that's the one we should be talking about, not the average, because an average can be made up of all the same number. It can be extremes, and that's where it's really dangerous. Some areas it's all very uniform. We've got some options when we talk about grazing crops. We can graze winter crops, we can graze spring sown winter habit canolas, and I'll talk about this a bit later on, or we can go pasture cropping with Lucerne. All three exercises that help iron out those feed gaps. So if we're grazing winter crops, which hollow are we going to fill? Where's the winter feed gap? So we're going to try and iron out that area there. If we're doing, what do we got next? Spring sown canola. So it's a canola plant that we use as a forage rape over summer. So we're going to tackle this area here, this feed deficit here. So all of a sudden, our graph might look more like this. We get rid of those absolute troughs. And it's pretty exciting stuff. And pasture cropping, well, that's a bit of both with Lucerne, is a bit of both worlds. We can graze it during the winter by putting a cereal into it, but then we get the summer production from the Lucerne. So we can get, both troughs ironed out a little bit. Basic to a lot of this stuff is the fact that cereals, and they are the fastest growing plants in the winter. And winters, I think everyone would agree, winter's a really tough time if you're running livestock. So we need more feed. We've got all the U-butte ryegrasses and things, but cereals, wheat, barley, triticale, oats, all grow faster than ryegrasses in general, speaking generally. So let's take advantage of that fact and use it to our advantage. Most of the time I talk about this, I'm talking to a group of grain growers, and they get really twitchy if I start talking about grazing their crops, taking them down to the boards, and they say, oh, we're going to wreck our grain yield. I've got livestock producers today, and my passion is livestock, so I can be a bit tough on the grain growers. Cereals have growth stages. They have an establishment stage, they have a vegetative stage, reproductive stage, and then they finish. And they're all quite orderly. We can take advantage of that vegetative stage because it doesn't contribute anything to grain yield if we harvest it at the right time. And for a livestock producer, it provides a really good source of feed out of season, the middle of winter, and if you're into cropping, and have we got farmers here that do some grain cropping? Yep, there's quite a few nods of the head. So even though livestock might be a priority, anyone who grows crops hates seeing their yield being knocked around. So if we do it properly, we have the best of both worlds. Once reproduction starts, and for those, the seed head starts in a cereal plant, starts right at the base, at the roots. It sits there in the vegetative stage, you grow leaves, tillers, and we spend a fortune, and we grow at this time of the year, there are crops this high, and we've spent a fortune. None of that actually makes any difference to grain yield. The last few leaves of a wheat plant are the ones that really contribute to grain yield. So let's use them, let's eat them, let's turn them into wool, beef, fertility, those sorts of things. So we can take that, harvest that, not affect grain yield, and feed our animals. Good agronomy is essential to the program. We're asking the paddock to do two jobs. We're asking it to grow a grain crop, and we're also asking it to fatten an animal, grow some wool, increase a calving percentage or a joining percentage. So we're asking it, don't pick your worst paddock. Most people do pick their worst paddock. Full of weeds, gets flooded in the winter, full of thistles, no nutrition, all those sorts of things. If you're going to do it and do it properly, and we've heard about doing things properly today, pick a good paddock and use good agronomy. This is, that's what I'm talking about, the free lunch. These two plants, this is a grazed wheat plant and this is an ungrazed wheat plant. This is the stuff we're looking at the moment that's about a foot high. That's what happens to it. It just dies, senesces off, and then blows away over the summer. It does go back into the soil as a bit of carbon and those sorts of things, but for all intents purposes, it's done its bit. So let's eat it, turn the plant into something like that. There was no difference in grain yield between those two plants, but we had grazing. In the middle of winter, when we're tight for feed, we got animals off earlier, and the other great benefit of this grazing crop system is we spell our pastures. We allow them to regenerate, get some leaf area, so when the sun does come out in August and it does start warming up, the energy receptors are there saying, hey, I'm going to catch you, and it bolts. Up to 30% increase in pasture production in some cases if we recorded by spelling them at this time of the year.
So
Question?
You're also dealing in a time, particularly with talking about cattle, of grazing during the winter time. Like the plant's got to be well rooted to the ground. But
Exactly.
You've got pugging issues and some of our paddocks you could hardly walk over.
Dead right, dead right. And one of the last things I'll say, this system's not for everyone, and partly for those reasons. We've looked into the pugging issues, and it's cosmetic. Unless it is really, really a disaster, and there'll be animal health issues and ethic issues if you've turned it into a bog. It's cosmetic. It repairs itself over the following year. Infiltration rates aren't affected. It does look awful, but the recovery of the crop will be affected if it's pugged, and so it is. Really good point, Ray. You've got one of the rules, and I haven't got time to talk about the rules of grazing, is there's a thing called a pinch and twist test. Melbourne Uni had their ag science students trying to develop a test to see how things were anchored. Pinch, twist, pull, and that replicates how an animal bites. And it's surprising how well it does work. So if you're in doubt, go down, try a few plants, pinch, twist, pull, and if it pulls out by the roots, you can't graze. If it doesn't, it's ready to graze. So it's horses for courses. That's how hard you can graze it if you do the job properly. That paddock turned out 0.02 of a tonne difference in yield. And we took it down to the boards. We really pushed the system.
Is that raised bed or is that trial plot?
That's trial plots there. That's trial plots. But it recovers to that. The other benefit is you do lose some biomass, and so about 30% by the time you get to after harvest. So in these days when burning stubbles is becoming a thing of the past, if you've got a 6-tonne stubble or a 3-tonne stubble, I know what I'd prefer to get my seeder through, a 3-tonne stubble. So if we can have reduce this biomass, there's a real advantage.
You'd also reduce things like rust and so on too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I thought I was going to get a Nobel Prize for solving the rust problem because I haven't, unfortunately. Powdery mildew is a different story. I had a cattle producer down at Birregurra, 32-inch rainfall, decided he wanted to go cropping. We had a run of dry years and he had some barley. He asked, I've got powdery, crop's dying, it's going yellow, it's got this funny sort of smoky stuff all over it. Went down, powdery mildew, absolutely poleaxing this crop. So I said, righto, see that mob of cows and calves, jam them in as many as you can, as quickly as you can. It was a bit wet, we pugged the paddock up a bit, but yeah, it worked really well. We grazed it 3 times actually. Those couple of little dots up there are the results of that grazing. Those couple down there are the areas we fenced off that we didn't graze. You can see there's an 80% difference in yield, and the only thing we did differently was graze the crop with cattle. We didn't use any chemicals. We ate the powdery mildew, got rid of it, and the plant started again, and the conditions weren't right for it to grow again. So I was really excited when I saw that. I thought, this is easy, this grazing crops business. I thought the same thing had happened with rust. Unfortunately, it doesn't. You just delay the onset and maybe save the fungicide. Oats are really good. They've been around. People have been grazing oats for years and years and years. They're more a dual purpose. There are lots of oats which dry matter production is the most important thing. Grain yield's not that important, but for cattle producers, lots of dry matter is important. Most important thing, if you're interested in grain yield, get your animals out before growth stage 30. If you're unfamiliar with growth stage 30, there are agronomists out there. Get your local agronomist out, take advantage of his expertise. And I'll show you...
You've got 15 minutes.
15 minutes. This is growth stage seed. That's the seed head there. Before reproduction starts, that seed head sits right down here at the roots of the plant. And so growth stage 30 is when it starts to elongate up the stem, and it just pushes up. It's like you've all seen bamboo that's got those little nodes in it. Well, the nodes are like an extension ladder. They move at the seed head up, and then it eventually pops out the flag leaf and does its thing. So this seed head, as you can imagine, if you lop him off, what's happened to your grain yield on that stem, that tiller? She's gone. She's history. So that's the critical thing. You can graze as much as you want up here, but protect that, that seed head. If you're in Tasmania and they turn on the centre pivots, they just grow more tillers, and it's not such an issue. But for us in dryland conditions, it's a struggle. John Kierkegaard at the CSIRO has been doing some terrific work. We need to get 5 tonnes of biomass in canola crops after they've been grazed to make sure we maintain our grain yield. There's the same sort of rule of thumb for cereals. I'll backpedal a little bit. Someone asked about oats before, and most of them, there are 3 different types of cereals out there. There's dual-purpose cereals, which oats there are a lot of oats are dual-purpose, and there are cereals that exhibit winter and spring habits. The spring habit cereals, they do things really orderly. You plant them, they grow, their vegetative state, reproductive state, and then they finish. And if you plant them in March, they'll flower in June. If you plant them in June, they'll flower in November. Bang, bang, bang. Cereals with a winter habit, you can plant them in January, and they won't flower until August. They need so many cold days, a thing called vernalisation, before they kick into the reproductive mode. So we can use that, and when we talk about grazing canolas, that's the asset that they've got that we use. I'll talk about that a bit later on. I'll flick the winter habit varieties. They're mostly the red wheats, and lots of you will have heard about red wheats, and they were going to be the saviour when they first came out. We plant them in on a thunderstorm in February, and we can graze them all winter, and then we can lock them up and turn them into a grain yield. They grow. The problem with them is they grow, unless you get them in very early, they're bloody slow to grow. They just don't provide enough dry matter. That's why we use some of the spring habits that grow quicker. When do we start to graze? Who'd have a preference? Who'd graze that paddock or that paddock? Who's on the right? Who's this paddock? Yep. Who'd graze this one? We've got a couple of people. I'm all for grazing a paddock like that, as long as, when Ray said before, pulling the plant out. There are lots of advantages to grazing that paddock. The issue is some people think just because that's bigger, you won't pull it out. I went to a place in the Strathbogie Ranges. We saw a paddock that was like that on granite soil that was really well anchored, and there was a paddock like this that was this high, and it was pulling out. The wind just blew and almost blew out because it had bent grass in it. They'd hammered the absolute bejesus out of it. It was like a talcum powder, and there was no way you could have grazed that paddock, even with sheep. So the real advantages in that is you can get onto it early. So when you really need to feed early in the season, you can graze that. Where if you have to wait for that, especially if it's a late start to the season like this, it's about now when we're over the worst of it, and if you want to take it through to grain yield, it's getting too late, especially with the threat of El Nino, failed spring, all those sorts of things. Be conservative, not gung-ho. It would be my suggestion.
We've found most of our stocks that we struggle to fill that winter feed gap.
Yep.
Because by the time you get the crop in on a bit of moisture, there's just no growth
Exactly.
to do it. So it's
Exactly. So especially if you wait to the crop to get to that stage. So that's why you might only get a 2 or 3 day grazing out of this paddock, but if you've got 10 paddocks lined up, all of a sudden you've got 20 days in July that you haven't got your animals on your pastures. So it does add up really quickly. But that's not for the faint-hearted, sort of launching into grazing 20 paddocks.
That one's better anchored because it's shorter?
Look, it can be. It just depends. It's not. They could be. It really depends what the paddock's like. It could be the opposite. Yeah. It's not this. It's not the.
It's knowing your paddock.
Yeah, it's knowing your paddock and doing the pinch and twist test, and the growth stage. See, this may well be past growth stage 30. This is very unlikely to be. With barley, it can be an issue. You can have really low energy levels in barley. And can cause, one of the big problems with grazing crops is animal health. You can get into all sorts of trouble. Wheat can pose huge problems for cattle production. You can reduce your weight gain because of the makeup of wheat, but there's some simple things. A loose leek, equal parts salt, coarse mag and ground limestone can alleviate that. And the animals will self-medicate on it. They'll just go, cut drench drums in half, mix it up, jam it in, and the animals, when they need it, they'll self-medicate.
Do you ever see nitrate poisoning?
Yeah, really interesting. The Borman group I'm doing, we had 42% protein in a barley paddock, and we grazed it, no effects, but I was a bit terrified when I saw the feed test. I've seen high protein levels, but I haven't seen nitrate problems as such. I'm sure, yeah, the metabolic problems are more of an issue. Twin lamb disease, milk fever, those sorts of things seem to be more an issue. And that's just that, I was talking about energy levels, really low energy or high energy, all at the same 60 days from grazing. So that just depends on the species. So if we've got cows and calves, we're not likely to want, if we've got high protein, we've got 28% protein, we've got lactating cows, we're not wanting to put them on a low energy ration because of the metabolic problems. And it can be a real issue. So if I had the choice, I'd put them up here on some red wheat that's got 13 megs of energy. It'll still have the high protein, but you're more likely not to have problems. Recipe for disaster to jam them in, high protein, low energy. So something to really be aware of.
Is that seasonal or is that?
It does seem to be, for a number of years we had that year in, year out. It seemed to have, this year the energy levels have been high. It is a bit seasonal. So that's the value of feed testing, doing a feed test, getting pre-warned and doing something about it. I'll flick over that one. It just shows grazing too late, what the impact can be. But it might be important to you. You might get those steers off earlier. It might just fill that feed gap. Grazing canola. That's a canola crop, a winter habit canola. In the middle of summer that was sown in the spring, there's about 3 tonnes of dry matter there. We grazed that 3 times and it still went on to yield 2.5 tonnes a hectare. So we've double stacked our enterprise. We've covered our winter feed gap and the summer feed gap and the early autumn feed gap with grazing.
Is that a different variety of canola?
It is. It's one of these long season, that was Taurus, a variety called Taurus, and there are a whole raft of them now that are available. It can be spring sown. Anyone who's established canola, especially in difficult conditions, slugs eat it, it drowns, it doesn't want to grow. It's like a merino weather lamb. It just wants to die. Canola and merino weaners, a lot in common, I reckon. So let's do something, sow it in spring, get it established. We can graze it in summer, recover the grain. Does it get any better, really? I mean, the problem is fitting it into your farming system. How do you find a paddock, if you're in a cropping rotation, how do you find a paddock to fit in? So it's coming out of pasture or a foal too wet, sow it in the spring.
Does that canola have urea on it?
Yes, we did put urea on it, and we put it on after grazing rather than prior to grazing, just because of the nitrate, the possibility of nitrate. That's one of the plants. You can see how many people have seen a canola plant with that many branches on it. That was grazed. It came out of here, and the root system, it's been around the traps now, the root system was down here. So this is why it thrives in the following winter when it gets wet and goes well, but just provides this tremendous feed source. 2 minutes. That's it, roots, and that's an autumn sown one. So you can see the difference in root mass and vegetative matter. Grazing, that's how we took 4 tonnes of dry matter, and feed quality is good, 13 megs of energy, and we still got a really good grain yield. One problem with canola, and the Western Australian guys have found this. This is the grazing of canola and weight gain. and then we've got pasture, and then we've got cereal crops. It takes a while for the animals to adjust to it. And anyone who's grazed a crop, especially canola, will see they go around the outside, they eat everything else, and then they decide they'll eat the... and so you have that, but they do catch up. To answer the question, because I've got 30 seconds, to answer your question, you can keep putting a cereal or a Lucerne or a canola into your Lucerne year in, year out. For those who have got guidance on their tractors, it's becoming a really easy job because you just move it over 2 centimetres and you're into row sow. So it's absolutely fantastic. But you subdue it, normal winter clean, put your cereal in, you can graze it, and this is the benefit. This is just the ordinary Lucerne production over winter. You add the cereal in, and you can see we're doubling, if not a bit more, production over the winter. So it's a really, again, we're getting that little feed gap there. We're bringing this curve so it's eating into that July period.
You don't have guidance on your tractor, and you rip through your crowns, your Lucerne. Do you decrease your land's longevity?
About 10% a year. Roughly, that's we've had a look at that.
10% of the lifespan or production?
Of plants pulled out or damaged, yeah. But rough. So it's usually in the paddocks that, those old paddocks that have been, you think, oh, I'll give it one more year. And it's amazing, you give them a hit of Roundup, which is not on the label, and I didn't say that, scruff a cereal into it, and the next year, you'll be surprised how, or the next summer, you'll be surprised how well the Lucerne recovers. It's a great ability to compensate Lucerne. Magnificent plant. We've got 30 seconds. That's just our extra feed gap. Same thing. So we've got this extra feed gap here. As the crop dies off, it gets eaten, the Lucerne starts to kick on. Interesting thing, we're getting a more balanced feed over the summer because we've got some residue left. Anyone who's dealt with red gut, it can be a real problem, that lush Lucerne after a thunderstorm. When we've got a bit of cereal in, our protein levels aren't as high. So a really, really good technique. Yeah, why is it important? The other real issue is carbon. We haven't heard anyone talk about carbon today and carbon footprints. We will be challenged by the government in the future to do something about carbon. Electricity, coal people are already doing it. We need to start thinking about carbon. So one of the ways we can do it as cattle producers is reduce emissions, and that's getting animals off quicker. So how do we do that? Feed them better feed, better quality feed, and select the genetics. We've got available, we can use EBVs. They're a really good tool. Breed average, we can select bulls from up here above breed average, so we can increase our turnoff weight times quicker, but we've got to feed them properly. So that's where all this stuff comes into it. Anyway, I think that's enough from me.
Well done.
30 seconds over, so thank you very much.